So Oneplus, if you're listening, don't do this no more. Don't do this no more. Welcome back. This is Jideani Says. So I've had the Oneplus 7 Pro for 100 days now, little over 3 months. So what have we learned in 100 days of owning OnePlus 7 Pro? We'll break it down into 4 segments: design and build, performance, camera, value, and then we'll do a wrap up. Let me start off with the things I don't like and I still don't like after 100 days of owning OnePlus 7 Pro. So the curved display and the glass build. I wasn't a fan of the curved display on the Samsung devices, and definitely still not a fan of them now. The ones on the OnePlus 7 Pro is a little bit even more aggressive, and it causes an issue when you're trying to watch video. That light that bounces off that curved display creates a reflection, and it kind of destroys your viewing experience just a tad bit. But in addition, it skews and it distorts text because they warp and curve and wrap around that curved display, and sometimes it makes it hard to select in text. They would have been better off just going with a flat design. OnePlus, if you're listening, don't do this no more. Now the glass build, I don't get that. Normally when you add glass as a main design feature, there has to be some beneficial value. A lot of times the big boys like the iPhones and the Samsungs, they do this because they equip their phone with wireless charging. And you know, this phone doesn't come with wireless charging. I'm not even a big fan of wireless charging. But if that's the compromise that I'm going to make, then I have to get a value out of it, a functionality. Right now, you just have a glass build that's susceptible to fingerprints. It's susceptible to cracking and breakage if you drop it, because it's very, very fragile. That's what glass is. That's what glass does. It breaks. So I get it. You'll probably think, well, just slap a case on it. One, I'm not a big case person. A lot of people probably aren't either. You like to feel your phone. You like it to be naked. You like to pick it up. You like the way it looks. All of that great things, right? But with this phone, you have to make an exception. And I made a video. It's called the sleekest phone cases for the OnePlus 7 Pro. Be sure to check it out. There's an information card. I think it's either here, maybe it's here, to check that video out. And in that video, basically, I talk about some of the nicest and sleekest phone cases to match this niceness and this sleekness and this sexiness of this OnePlus 7 Pro, to protect it from slipping and sliding, because this phone will slide. You hold on to it long enough, it'll pick up the oils and the sweats from your hands, and it will easily fall out your hands. It's the slipperiest phone I've ever used. But let's talk about the good things about the design and build. This Nebula Blue, I love that companies now are doing something with the designs of these phones, because I swear it was getting so boring at one point where all the phones kind of looked alike. But this Nebula Blue, this parallax type design that they went with, that when the light hits it, a different blue of hue, or a different hue of blue, bounces off and reflects and gives you a different tonality. You gotta like that. This is probably or arguably the nicest looking phone on the market. I'm glad they went with that. A lot of people weren't big fans of this motorized pop-up camera. I'm a huge fan of it. It hasn't really disappointed yet. So to achieve that full 100% viewing display, OnePlus went with a motorized pop-up camera system. And in the 100 days that I've had this, it's worked fine. Now, they have concerns when this thing first was announced that this is OnePlus was doing, because I was worried about how would a biometric system work with a motorized camera? Would it pop up fast enough to recognize my face, then pop back in? How fast would it process the information that it gathered? But this does work very well. It's very fast. It works very simultaneously with recognize my face and then processing that information. I haven't had any issues with it. Surprisingly, I actually rely on it more than I do the fingerprint scanner. And the fingerprint scanner on here is definitely really good. It's better than last year's 6T version, and it's better than a lot of the ones on a lot of the mobile devices. But I do tend to rely on that pop-up camera so often because it's so fast. Guys, once again, the theme of the OnePlus 7 Pro is it's speed. I will say the only thing I've noticed using this phone is dust do get trapped in this casing. So be sure from time to time when that extracts to wipe out the lens and get the dust particles out of the way. But that's pretty much it. But it gives you this immersive 6.6 or 6.7 display that when you watch content, you see the entire thing. This display is probably the best on the market. And a huge part of that is that 90 hertz display. I will say this, I am one of those people in that small category that don't think it's that big of a deal. After 100 days, it's just not that huge a leap of a milestone for you to consider. Is it enough for me to say, okay, I can never go back to a 60 hertz display screen? No, it's just not. Now 140 or 144 hertz, that's where you will see your difference. I will say though, where you really notice the beauty of that 90 hertz is when you pinch and zoom, whether you're trying to do it on Instagram or you're trying to do it on one of your photos or you're on the web, you're using your browser. That pitch and zoom, the fluidity that comes with that, that's really where you see that 90 hertz take form. But outside of that, not really a big deal. But so yeah, design, I have to give this, I want to give it an A-. So I'll say, but this blue pushes it to that B+, A- range. The glass build and the curved display really weren't things I was a fan of, so maybe I'll still give it an A-. Performance. Speed, speed, and more speed. So 30 days, that 3 months mark to 100 days is normally the barometer I set to measure the longevity a phone is going to have throughout the entirety of when I own it. That's normally when I figure out if a phone is going to make it or it isn't. Normally around that 3 month mark, every phone that I've ever owned starts to show you a little sluggishness, maybe a little stutter here and there. It's always normally the beginning of the end. This is the first phone ever that I've ever owned that is as fast as it was from the first day that I got it. 3 months in, it's still blazingly fast. The OnePlus 7 Pro glides through apps, whether you're opening stuff, you're closing stuff, whether you're browsing through the web. It's just the speed on this phone is remarkable. And I'm so impressed that OnePlus, I don't know everything they did, but I know that it's because the optimization of setting the operating system to be light, to be optimized with everything else about this phone, from the camera to the processor. Everything is in tune to talk to everything else. They speak one cohesive language. Kind of going the Apple route. And I don't know how they've managed to do it. And it's not just the OnePlus 7 Pro, it's all of the devices the OnePlus pushes out, has that fluidity and that speed, and it always stays fast. And that's something I definitely have to commend them on, because this phone has just been flying through everything that I've thrown at it. You're navigating somewhere, you're on a highway, and there's a turn that's coming up. You gotta take that exit. You can't lose your way, and you pull up your GPS and it pops open and just instantly start navigating. Priceless. So let's talk camera. The most controversial aspect of this phone. OnePlus released this phone with a half-baked camera that DNO Marks gave high scores for some reason, I'm not sure. And I personally thought this camera was D+ quality. D+. It was top 5 worst cameras on the market for this price point. But in the past month, OnePlus has released 5 to 6 software upgrades that has greatly and substantially increased and improved the quality of this camera. When I first got the OnePlus 7 Pro, which comes with a triple camera setup system, everything was inconsistent. It was borderline trash. The 48 megapixel shooter was inconsistent. Sometimes it would take some really good pictures, and then sometimes it would just flat out bomb. The wide angle camera was the worst. That thing was just messy. It was a hot mess from the get-go, and it still, even up to now, didn't allow you to video record using a wide angle camera. Surprisingly, the telephoto was actually pretty good. The video recording was actually the best feature of this camera coming out. But in total, the cameras were not good. Images came out soft across the board. There was no sharpness, autofocus was slow, saturation was off, Contrast, like I said, was off. The color science, which is the accuracy in terms of what you see in the lens, according to what's in real life, was just off. I don't know what OnePlus was thinking when they released it, but here's what makes OnePlus, the company, different than any other mobile manufacturer out there. What they do is they listen to consumers, they solicit feedback, and they improve on it. And between the point where this phone was released to now, this phone went from having top 5 worst cameras on the market to top 5 best cameras on the market. It's not rated as the greatest, but for the simple fact it's now top 5, adding that with what you get with this phone makes this probably the best bang for the buck, or probably the best overall phone on the market, depending on who you talk to. Colors now are much more vivid. They have fixed the autofocus issue. It's more saturated, just to that point where it just looks good and not too much like Samsung can overdo it sometimes. The wide angle camera is more consistent with the other 2 cameras now in terms of quality. Everything now just looks great, and I'm glad that they have done that and worked on it. But you gotta think to yourself, is this acceptable moving forward? That brings us into value. This phone is probably now a lot more cheaper. You can probably get this phone probably $100 less than when it launched out. So considering what you get now with an improved, ramped up camera system, a nice build, nice design, 90 hertz display screen, and then you have the speed. It's the speed, guys. When you add all of that up, the value that you get with this thing is just unbelievable. Now, there are some great phones that are out there. There are some phones that are probably cheaper than OnePlus 7 Pro. They come close to matching the quality in terms of performance. But this one, I think, is still the king of the hill. I know the Note 10 just came out, and that's an excellent phone. I probably want to get my hands on that to review that as well, because that's a very sleek phone as well. But because that phone is $1,000 and this one is probably hovering around $650 right now, you just can't beat the value on this phone. You just can't. So let's do a wrap up. OnePlus 7 Pro was launched 100 days ago. And in 100 days, they've made vast improvements in terms of software update to address this phone's biggest weakness, its camera. Everything that's about this phone that was great from the get-go is still great now, with some of those things that I talked about, the curved display and the glass build. Look at this fingerprint. Look at that. Look at this. Look at the fingerprint on this thing. Sheesh. So those things are still annoying 100 days later. It doesn't change there. But the value, the performance, the build, those are things that makes this phone stand out. Now, OnePlus have now entered into uncharted waters. This is the premium territory. The $700 and up, once you get to that swimming pool lane, you're playing with the big boys now. We've given OnePlus a pass. We gave them a benefit of the doubt when they came out with half-baked software with this camera. And we did that because OnePlus had cultivated a tradition of putting out great devices while undercutting the market price. And we loved them for that. So we gave them a pass. But moving forward, OnePlus, take this as a warning. You get normal passes when you get to this price point. You charging $700 up to $800, which I do see the prices increase as new future devices come out. You have no excuse to put out half-baked software and mediocre to trash quality camera. And moving forward, there will be no excuses. They would definitely have to step up their game if they want to stay in this premium market, because now they went from becoming the hunter to the hunted. They got a target on their back right now. So depending on how they use that, it will kind of speak volumes about the company moving forward, and if they plan on sticking to their key signature of never settle. Because at one point, you want to consider, am I settling if I'm getting half-baked software? That'll be up to you to decide. But that's been 100 days of what we have learned using the OnePlus 7 Pro. If you haven't gotten it, you need to go out and get it, because then you know you have one of the greatest devices on the market. The variant that I have is the 8 gigabyte variant. There is a 12 gigabyte in different colors. I think it's an almond. Listen, for the reviewers and YouTubers that tell you 12 gigabytes is overkill and unnecessary, don't listen to them. There's no such thing as too much RAM. Okay, I'm sorry, I'm back. But yeah, make sure you get you whatever version you feel works for you, or whatever version you feel like you can afford. And make sure, let me know what you think about the one you get. But yeah, this has been 100 days of using the OnePlus 7 Pro and the lessons that we've learned. That's been it. Thank you for tuning in. Talk to you guys later.